states that for races with more than 2 racing laps but less than 25% distance completed, 6 points will be awarded to the winner. For races between 25 and 50% completed, 13 points will be given to the winner. And for a race between 50 and 75% finished, the tally will be bumped up to 19 points, and anything over 75% is full. However, the Japanese Grand Prix of 2022 was only 28 laps long, or 52%. But the regulations only have these rules to account for races which have been stopped and cannot be restarted, and do not cover races which have had a period of red flag stoppage and have recommenced, meaning that 4 points were awarded, and Max Verstappen had gained the required gap to second place Perez of 113 points to take the championship in Japan. This certainly has not been the season it was shaping up to be after 3 rounds, with Ferrari far, far in front. And so far, it's been a far cry as well from the down-to-the-wire, tumultuous nature of last season, which will live long, long in the memory. But there is no denying the might of that Red Bull Adrian Newey designed car. 12 race victories out of 18 so far, which can seemingly win from any position. They will be a great force to reckon with in the years to come within this new era, and it could pave the way for Max Verstappen to draw close to the Schumacher-Hamilton record, if Ferrari and Mercedes aren't careful or good enough. Also to note, this is Charles's 4th podium in a row, the first time he has achieved this feat this year, and Sergio Perez's P2 means that he has moved ahead of Charles in the standings by a point. Carlos Sainz's DNF, his 5th of the season, means that he drops 5 points behind the eventual 8th place George Russell, who I'll talk about later. Moving on, Esteban Ocon managed to hold off Lewis Hamilton against all of the odds to take his best finish of the season, P4, the 12 points moving Esteban Ocon comfortably out of the firing line of his teammate Fernando Alonso at 78 points on the season. Lewis tussled with Fernando Alonso on the opening lap, coming out on top prior to the red flag. Both he and Ocon pitted for inters with the pack before the two of them passed the fast-descending Mick Schumacher, who had decided to stay out on the wets, fatefully. The pair spent the last quarter of an hour jockeying for position, nearly touching at multiple points, but Esteban Ocon used all of his skill against the 7-time world champion, as Fernando Alonso had done at the request of his teammate last year in Hungary, and managed to come out on top. Sebastian Vettel followed behind in 6th, scoring points for the 2nd weekend in a row for the 3rd time this season, and moving his points tally up to 32, surpassing Ricciardo in the championship to 11th place. This also elevates Aston Martin to within 7 points of Alfa Romeo in 6th, so another top 5 finish for Vettel could seal a fantastic comeback season for the team in green. And Vettel himself had to make a comeback on Sunday, as from 9th on the grid, he made contact with Alonso into the first corner, causing him to spin out. And after the prolonged rain break, Seb took a chance on the inters as soon as he could, quickly setting the fastest lap of the race on a drying track, causing the rest to pour in and Vettel to reascend the order. Before long, the German was up to 6th place as he passed his compatriot Schumacher on his way to his 12th top 6 finish at Suzuka. What a result! Fernando Alonso was another forced to charge through the field, as he stayed out on the wets whilst most came into the pits, taking the race lead, but realising his error a lap later, and following the trend. He powered through the lower end of the midfield before pitting once more with 7 minutes to go and brushing past Russell on the final laps for 7th place. The 11th time in a row he's seen the checkered flag in the points. George's 8th means that he is slowly losing his grip on 2nd or even 3rd in the World Drivers' Championship, as the Brit was unable to fire up his intermediate tyre like the others, and was not able to have a huge impact on the higher midfield places as a result. But the story of the day was certainly Nicholas Latifi, who secured his first points of the season with 9th, moving him into 20th in the championship. This is quite an impressive result, considering the fact that he started plumb last. But for Pierre Gasly, who started from the pit lane due to a mechanical issue, and came about in the same way that Vettel benefited. Latifi pitted early, and whilst others did the same, he had made enough ground up to slot into 9th, his first points since Belgium last year. It's interesting to think that all of his points finishes have come in wet or damp conditions. Hungary and Spa in 2021, and Japan this year. Despite all of his very glaring and obvious faults, he seems to be quite an opportunistic driver, who does have some understanding of wet conditions, and uses the other drivers' mistakes in these tricky moments to his own advantage. Lando Norris rounded out the top 10 for the first time this season, finishing ahead of his teammate Ricciardo in P11, who found himself in the podium places after refusing to pit for Inters, but he soon suffered the consequences, and never managed to draw near enough to his teammate to snag that point. Lance Stroll was P12, having made up 7 places in the opening laps, before an unsafe release on K-Mag within the almost balletically organised pit lane put an end to his chance of points. Yuki Tsunoda got into the top 10 in the opening laps, but made the mistake of pitting late on, and was unable to march through the pack like Fernando, and ended up in 13th, ahead of Magnussen and the 2 Alfa Romeos, who were both unlucky once again, as Valtteri Bottas suffered in the pits after making it into the points with Tsunoda, and Zhou spun early on, though he did pick up the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. Mick Schumacher and Pierre Gasly were the last of the finishers, with Mick gambling on a safety car, which would have saved his decision to stay out on wets, and Gasly picking up an advertisement hoarding from the Sainz crash, being forced to pit for a new front wing, essentially putting an end to his race. However, Gasly was involved in one of the more shocking events of the weekend. Pierre was the last car to pull into the pit lane after the red flag was thrown, and, as he did so, he spotted a stationary tractor to the left side of the track. This is, of course, the 8-year anniversary of the death of Jules Bianchi, after he smashed into a recovery vehicle, which was sent out to clear away the car of Karim Karthikeyan back in 2014 at a similarly rain-soaked Suzuka. This incident led to an outcry from drivers, former drivers, and almost all members of F1 over the lacklustre safety routine at the circuit, as this could well have been another tragedy if luck was not on Pierre's side. Another interesting little side note here: every single driver who started this Grand Prix in the points finished in the points, apart from Carlos Sainz, who spun out within the first lap, and Nicholas Latifi took his place. So 9 out of the 10 drivers who started in the points finished in the points. Furthermore, 11th place Ricciardo also started in 11th place. And Yuki Tsunoda was only 1 grid position away from his starting slot of 12th. The same can be said for Zhou Guanyu, Mick Schumacher, who actually also finished where he started, and Valtteri Bottas. So, despite all of the action that happened in this Grand Prix, everything all sort of fell into order and pretty much started as it had finished. Now onto my driver of the day, and it's Sebastian Vettel. The German qualified incredibly on Saturday with P9 in the dry, but it seemed to slip away from him at the first corner, as he spun out after making contact with Fernando Alonso. He took a chance on the intermediates and looked very pacey whilst others concerned about track positions, elevating him into 6th at a track which he loves so dearly. As I said previously, Aston Martin have been on a roll, and now all they need is consistency to get them to the finish line. Now for my team of the race, and it's Alpine again. Two gutsy drivers produced two gutsy drives, as Esteban Ocon held off Lewis Hamilton for his best finish of the season, 4th, whilst his teammate Alonso managed 7th after pitting late, and almost pipped Seb to the line for P6, but lost out by 1/100th of a second. However, McLaren could only muster 1 point with Lando Norris. So, after a devastating double DNF, which led to a 4-5 for McLaren last weekend, Alpine are back on top in the battle for 4th by 13 points. Finally, for my struggle of the race, and it's George Russell. After starting from 8th, the Brit was fuming when asked to come onto the Inters, and it was a proleptic marker of what to come, as George could not fire up his tyres in order to charge to another top 5 finish, and it was easy pickings for Fernando Alonso, who blitzed the lower end of the points, as I said earlier, after pitting with 12 minutes remaining. This is also the first time that Mercedes have gone 2 race weekends without a podium since Miami, so they need to fix up their act if they want to be in the fight for the lofty Drivers' Championship positions. Thank you for listening to F1 Every Week. Congratulations to Max Verstappen for his 2nd World Championship victory, and tune in next week for more F1 news.